right, I think we are live.
Awesome.
I think we are live.
I don't know if I'm live on Instagram, but hopefully on Facebook. I don't know.
All right, I'm seeing we at least have one viewer
Awesome. Welcome.
for right now. So hopefully we'll have some more come on in here so we can get to all of these wonderful jewels today.
Well, maybe they will just get like a lot of one. They can ask us any questions they want. We'll be happy to answer them. Yeah,
Yeah.
awesome. And this is recorded, right? So people can watch it later.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much for having me. Gosh, we were just saying we haven't talked in like maybe 3 years.
It has been a long time, but a long time coming because I know that we said that we are going to, make sure that we have, keep in contact
Yeah.
and actually just get the information out there to people,
Yep.
because I think it's truly needed and, in our respective fields when we're talking about leadership, when we're talking about nonprofits, when we're talking about our businesses, different things like that. So
Mm-hmm.
I think this is most definitely a needed conversation.
Yeah.
So you know what? Let's just go ahead and get into it.
Get into it.
Whoever, can hop in and they can, have an opportunity to review this a little bit later on, or they may be in a situation where they may come in a little bit later after they've had a little bit of something to eat, right?
Yeah, it is lunchtime, isn't it? Yeah.
Yes. So, all right. So let's just get into it. Hi, Sheena. Thanks so much for coming on with Innovative Strategies. So we can let's talk about it. We're talking about leadership and team development on today.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is an amazing topic. You are our leadership and organizational development expert.
Mm-hmm.
And I just want you I'm going to leave this opportunity for you to introduce yourself to our viewers, to yours, reintroduce yourself to yours, and introduce yourself to mine. And for us to just be able to, jump into it and talk about the great things that's surrounding leadership and team development.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, thank you so much again for having me. So, I mean, even though we haven't talked in so long, I have felt connected to you. I enjoyed when we talked so much and I really liked your energy and I've been just keeping up with everything you're doing. So I feel like it hasn't been that long, but in any case, I'm Sheena Sullivan and I'm an executive director and I'm also a candidate for a PhD in organizational development leadership. I actually defend my proposal Friday, so hopefully I'm coming to the tail end of my PhD. And I'm in Des Moines, Iowa. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and let's see. So yeah, we're going to talk about like kind of how I got into nonprofit leadership, but I just have like a lot of different experiences and I've been in I feel like kind of every different stage of nonprofit leadership, and so just excited to share whatever you feel like um, your audience wants to hear. So if you guys have questions, and also if folks are on for me, I can't see your questions, but you can always message me, and if you get something from this that you want more, and I will be happy to follow up with you.
Absolutely. That sounds great, Sheena. I want you to just maybe even just talk about the background. That's what we want to hear. We want to hear all about how you actually got into leadership, how you got
Mm-hmm.
into your business. How did you make this be the powerhouse that it actually is right now?
Sure. So, okay. So, when I was in my early 20s, I was in college for social work um, and in Chicago. So, I lived in Chicago. I was going to school for social work, and I did an internship at Chicago Coalition for the Homeless. And they are really about like advocacy and community organizing. And I didn't even know about community organizing. I didn't know a lot about nonprofits. I just knew I wanted to be like in the helping field. And the director of community organizing at Chicago Coalition for the Homeless, his name is Jim Field. And he said, "You're an organizer." And he like explained to me what that was. And I remember the story he told me. I don't know if you've heard it, but He was like, "Have you heard the stories about the babies going down the river?"
Oh, wow.
I
No. Let's
know.
go. Well, hold on. We want babies going down the river now. What's
This is how he explained it to me. How he
okay?
explained like community organizing was to me. So he said, imagine that you are by a river and there are babies in baskets and they're flowing down the river. And he was saying, like, a social worker, um, like a direct service person, is taking each baby out of the river and they're finding them homes and taking care of them. And that's really important work. But the other part of the important work is when someone goes down, like goes way upstream and it's like, where are all these babies coming from?
Okay.
So that's how he explained to me, like, direct service people, really important work. They're taking care of people one-on-one, and community organizers, advocates are going and trying to figure out, like, what is the root of the problem here and how do we solve the larger problem instead of trying to just, help people one by one. And that just really resonated with me, and he like really took me under his wing and mentored me. I went to the Midwest Academy and did community organizing training there. And then I ended up with Illinois Coalition for Immigrant and Refugee Rights doing community organizing with undocumented immigrants. And it just happened that we started an organization. So it was
Oh, wow.
called Southwest Suburban Immigrant Project. They are still around and like doing amazing work. So they have this, when we started the organization, and I want to say, like, gosh, when did we start? 2009. We had this event called Day of the Immigrant, and it was like 4 of us, and we had 1 protester. And then now they still have this event, and it's one of the biggest events in the Chicago area, and 30,000 people coming out every year. So that was really cool. But so getting into like starting a nonprofit just from really a grassroots kind of perspective, I had what I think a lot of nonprofit founders have, which is just like passion and gumption and just natural leadership. You get this thing off the ground. And then once I got into it, I realized like how much I did not know. So, so I went back to school to do a master's in social work, but to focus really on leadership and nonprofits at Loyola in Chicago. Started learning about like how to be a director, how to develop an organization. And then went to Denver, where I got the job as the director of a Meals on Wheels organization. And I was there, and I had managed staff like at the first organization, but it was different because they were more like peers and leaders and, grassroots, like real. So I stepped into this role at Meals on Wheels, and I had a kitchen staff with a chef and a sous chef and a pastry chef. I had administrative staff, and realized like how little I knew about management. Like leadership is different than management, and running a sizable nonprofit. Like it's not a massive nonprofit, but certainly a lot with a much larger budget than I'd had at the grassroots organization. And that was a huge learning experience. And I was like, I want to know more. So I went to start my PhD. I had a baby, and I moved back to Des Moines. And now I run an organization here that does family support services and child abuse prevention. And I feel like there will always be things to learn. There will always be more to learn, but I really feel like I'm finally like getting it. You know what I mean? Like I really feel like I'm digging into the research, and I'm walking the talk, practicing the things that I'm learning, and loving just like really geeking out about leadership.
Well, let me stop you right there. So
Yeah.
I think for a lot of us, we well, for some of us, right? Some of us take unconventional routes or, to get to a leadership position. And then you have some that, start at the bottom and they work their way up to the top, and they go through these management programs and they go through these leadership programs. So, they're not necessarily handheld, but they have an opportunity to learn and be mentored and things like that.
Yeah.
So, I wonder though, I wish there were more programs, more leadership programs, and more leadership, opportunities that were out there for
Mhm.
all different types of, or all different types of organizations, so that you would have those that come from unconventional means, where they may just be coming from a completely different industry into a complete another industry, and just don't know. They don't know what to do.
Yeah.
And so, for me, I think I've always thought of leadership as being a situation where some people inherently have it, and
Yeah.
then sometimes that still needs to be cultivated. And then you
Hmm.
have some people that may not necessarily were inherently leaders and don't even want the responsibility, but now
Yeah.
they're in the role, and now what do they do?
Yeah.
So, what are your thoughts on that when you have individuals that come in different, I guess, in different capacities, where
Hmm.
you may have some that come in as they've been going in as a I don't know, just entry level to mid level, and now they're
Hmm.
in a leadership role, versus those who may come in and like just don't know what they're doing. What
Yep.
what what are your thoughts on that, and what kind of advice would you give those persons?
Yeah. So earlier I mentioned like how I was a natural leader, but I didn't know anything about management. And so something I also teach management classes at the local community college. And something I always really try to drive home with them is that there are two parts to running a company or an organization, any kind of organization, and they are leadership and management. And those are two separate skill sets in one job. So like leadership, is being able to influence people and motivate people and coach people. And all of those are really important things. And then management is more like tracking the KPIs and doing the budgeting and making sure that everybody's in the right role and you have like a succession plan and a leadership or a talent pipeline, and those kinds of things. And I think most of us are really talented naturally at one or the other who end up in these roles.
Mhm.
So your natural leaders, like me, just kind of like end up in it. Like you keep getting promoted because you're a natural leader, right? Like, or you've had the urge to start something, like typically pretty entrepreneurial, like you're willing to take on that
Mhm.
challenge. And then managers are people, natural managers, maybe they're the ones who come up, like they've been excellent in their job. So I'm thinking like of our program director. Her name is Rachel, and she's like so incredible. And what does she say? She says, Sheena is the gas and I'm the brakes.
Oh,
Um, this is like something I stole from my research, but I can't remember who to credit for it. But like, so I'm going off topic a little bit, but there are pingers and pongers. So pingers are people who have the ideas, like
mhm.
idea people, visionary people. So if you're thinking of a game of ping pong, pongers are people who take that idea and hit it back. So they're like, okay, great idea. How do we do that? Like what
Yeah.
do we need to make that happen? Those are the managers. So you have like leaders who have the ideas, managers who are the taskmasters. Now, in my mind, if I left the organization, Rachel would be the natural one to step into that role because she's such an exceptional manager. However, Rachel doesn't want to. Like she knows that she loves what she does, that she's a taskmaster, that she doesn't want to be responsible for those kind of like visionary, big picture kind of stuff. But and many times people like that do just keep getting promoted because they're so good. They're so
Yeah.
organized, they're so detail oriented. So you can come up as a manager, like say you're in an organization, you just are amazing and you just keep getting promoted and you're a manager. Or you're a leader, you just like you have these leadership skills, you're willing to take it on, you end up in the position. Now, whether you're a more natural leader or you're a more natural manager, your job then is to learn the other set of skills because you have to have both.
Mhm.
So I don't think, there's a right way to come into it necessarily, but like me coming in as a leader, I've had to learn how to manage and I've had to learn how to surround myself with people who have the skills and the knowledge that I don't have. And if I came in as a manager, I know I would need to learn how to really influence people and rally them around a cause, because that's so important. So I don't know. I hope that answers your question, but I think it's just like two different routes. No matter how you get there, you have to figure out the other piece, figure out what you need to figure out, you know?
Yeah, I think that's a wonderful assessment. And I think that was a wonderful response, Sheena, when it comes to leadership. Seriously, because you do have those two different, I guess, I guess two different leadership styles
Mm-hmm.
or directives that you need to do. So you have some that are, some individuals that are the leaders, they're the visionaries, and some that are more managerial.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say, what are some of your tips, I suppose,
Mm-hmm.
for those that need to, I guess, cross train in both? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because you may have a situation, or some organizations may have a situation where they need the manager to kind of step up
Yeah.
into that leadership role and not just delegate and
Yes.
be the taskmaster. Maybe they need them to have a little bit more of a creative a creative side to them, or like you said, surround yourself with other people,
Mm-hmm.
and be able to rally those talents together to bring those out, to get
Mm-hmm.
the job done on a leadership standpoint. And how would you go about, or what tips would you give someone that's a natural visionary,
Uh-huh.
but they need to be a taskmaster?
Mm-hmm.
What maybe like are some tips that you could probably give those type of people, or even um maybe, yeah, just tips. I think that.
Yeah. I think that no matter what, like it starts with self-awareness, and being willing to look at your strengths and look at your weaknesses, and try to be open to knowing, to learning all about yourself, and to not be defensive about it. Like, nobody is perfect. Nobody knows everything or is good at everything. So like, I think my younger self, like it has taken a long time for me to get to that point where, um, I have self-awareness, and self-awareness is not an excuse for me. Like, oh, I'm just a visionary, so I'm bad at details. But like,
Mhm.
now what do you do with that information? And now that's not to say, like, I'm not a person who thinks that you have to strengthen every weakness. I actually think, like, um, self-awareness is key, especially because once you can learn what your strengths really are, then you can lean into those and then figure out, like I said, how to surround yourself with people who then have strengths that balance those out. So, for instance, okay, so I know that I'm a visionary, right? Like, I know I'm a leadership person. It really just happened that, well, I mean, I met Rachel before I took the job. I felt like she was going to be a great counterpart to me. Um, but once I say I didn't, if I had that self awareness, like, I'm really a visionary person, but also these are the things we need to keep an eye on as an organization. And I'm not off the hook. Like, I need to keep an eye as the director of the agency. I have to know, like, what our outcomes are, like how many benchmarks we've hit each month and what we're building to satisfy. Like, we're state funded, and there are a lot of I's that have to be dotted and T's that have to be crossed. So not letting myself off the hook, but being like, who can I get on my team who has those strengths, who can help me with that, so
Mhm.
that so that I can be looking at the big picture, they can be looking at the nitty gritty details, and then together we have the full spectrum of skills and talents that we need. So
Yeah.
so I think, like, self-awareness, that's where it starts, and then not feeling like you have to fix every single thing about yourself, but figuring out how you can lean into, like, what you're really good at and then mitigate. Like, be aware of things that your natural tendencies could make you miss so that you don't miss them. And then also figuring out, how you leverage your strengths and get people in there and leverage their strengths as well.
I love it. I love it. So the big takeaway from that, whether you are moving from just a visionary, a leader, but to also be able to be a great manager as well, and vice versa, is
Mhm.
self-awareness. I really
Self-awareness.
love that. I love
Mhm.
that. And also you kind of touched on a little bit about team and
Mhm.
teams and the importance of having a great team. Now, myself, I can brag a little bit. I have a
Mhm.
fantastic team. I
Mhm.
do.
Yeah.
I'm so thankful that they are there and they have my back and I have theirs. And and I love the fact that I'm able to cultivate a team atmosphere.
Yeah.
Now, yes, I may be the visionary. Yes, I may be the leader, but I want to hear from them as well because, we're doing this thing together. I feel like, this is just a whole, we're going on this path together because they're with me.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what do you say, or how do you feel when you encounter groups that you're consulting with and there
Mhm.
is discord or morale issues
Mhm.
between leadership and the team? How do you, I mean, what kind of advice do you give these groups? Because let's be honest, I think almost, well, I'm not going to say everybody because maybe some people have had wonderful job experiences, but
Mhm.
there are some of us there's
Mhm.
some of us, and myself included, that have had some challenging times within
Yeah.
certain positions and in certain roles. So, I could say that some people needed some leadership training and different things like that. But,
Mhm.
what kind of advice would you give to those organizations that may be struggling a little bit about that, or struggling a little bit with the leadership, struggling a little bit with the
Mhm.
team and just getting everything like cohesive?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So that's such a good question. And I want to start by saying that gosh, I feel bad that I'm always like citing research and can't remember who to credit, but someone said this recently and I read it and it resonated so much with me. And it was about how, like, your value as a leader and a manager, and I'm paraphrasing, is really based on your ability to influence other people. And the point is that, like, no matter how great you are and all the talents and skills you have,
Mhm.
your job is to be a multiplier effect so that you are more, because you're influencing your team and organizing your team to go out there and help you make the change that you're trying to make in the world. You are a greater force for good than you could be on your own, right?
I
So, like, there's no, to be like a lone wolf in this, and especially, in the helping profession and the nonprofit world, like, is not a point of pride, because that's a person who is not realizing their full potential. Because in order to realize their full potential and have the biggest impact, they would need to be influencing more people and having a multiplier expanding effect. And so I have worked in really toxic environments, and when you're in one, because people don't stay, they burn out quick,
Yeah.
right? And there's a lot of turnover. And so it would be like, so, I mean, what would make or break that kind of situation if you're going into consult is if that leader is willing to have self awareness, to look at what's really going on and want to fix it. Because if they don't, then there's no point in trying, right? Like, that's where the problem is. They are the influence. And if they won't own that, then it's pointless. But you just tell everyone who works for them to go get other jobs for better bosses, right? But if
Yeah.
they did have self awareness, if they did want to grow, if they did want to improve, then I think you would just, like, really assess the culture. I'd have to ask a lot of questions about, like, what are you working on? One thing so I'm jumping around a little bit here, but I've really been digging into the research on worker wellness. And I think that ties back to this, right? Because,
Okay.
like, this is such a burnout sector where people are giving, giving, giving. And one thing I know that I would look at is, like, how they are addressing the wellness of their workers. And I'm working on an article about this right now, but when we usually say, so what comes to mind? There's no wrong answer. When I say like corporate wellness initiative, what comes to mind for you?
Corporate wellness initiatives.
Yeah.
I think for me, what comes to mind is basically some corporation that has this whole mind, body, spirit type of
Mm-hmm.
situation, and they have checkups with their client. Well, no, I'm sorry, with their workers, just to check in on them, making sure that they're okay. Um, just yeah. So that's kind of where.
Well, you okay? You're way farther ahead than I was than when I
Oh,
started this. But I was thinking like when I heard that like wellness edition, I'm thinking like yoga at work or like they're teaching mindfulness, or they're like having a spa day or something like that. And not that those aren't good things, but this article I read is just like shook me. And it was like initiatives like that um, work from the perspective that stress is the employee's problem to manage, you
mm,
know? So like, oh, you need to be more mindful and then you'll be less stressed. Or you need to like do more yoga, or
oh,
read this book on self-care, take a bubble bath,
yeah.
and not really addressing like the root cause. And so to the ways to start looking at like the root cause of burnout and if people are stressed, if a toxic environment or um, do they have enough resources to do their job? Like
Mm,
time, physical equipment,
love that.
training, you know what I mean? Like, do they have enough time to do the work that you're giving them and that's on their plate? And is someone keeping an eye on if they have too much work to do, if their laptop doesn't work, if they are expected to do something in their job they've never been trained on, right? So that's the big one is do they have the resources? Are they in the right job? Like, are they
Mm,
engaged in their work and enjoy their work? Um, do they have work-life balance? All those kinds of things.
mm,
And so that's like you have to look at like the systemic things to see. It's kind of like the babies coming down the river. Like you could take a worker and teach a yoga, but let's go let's go to the root of this and figure out like why is everyone so tired, or why are they so unhappy? And one way that you can really get to that is through just like asking people questions, so
yeah.
if I feel like I'm all over the place here, but if I was a consultant with an organization, if I knew that the leader was someone who wanted to grow, who wanted to improve, then we would just have a lot of conversations and figure out like what is going on here, like what is the thing that is stressing people out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really like that. That sounds like a fantastic way to do it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But what I'm also hearing is accountability and for those leaders to actually hmm, having that self-reflection or
Yeah.
self-awareness to understand that there is a problem, you
Yeah.
know, because I think so many times in a lot of organizations I'm not sure if people are connected. Like sometimes you have leadership that's disconnected from the actual inner workings of what
Yeah.
goes on day to day, right?
Yeah.
So like for instance, well, this one is an example of toxic leadership, but for instance, I read an article the other day where this young lady, it's a very tragic story, where she
Mm-hmm.
actually had been going through, I guess, some toxic bullying and different things like that, with leadership. And she had some mental health issues, depression and things like that. And
Mm-hmm.
she actually, committed suicide and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
It was just an unfortunate, situation all around. But sometimes, in these toxic environments, you know, I wonder what can be done so that people can see that they are the person that are actually the toxic, especially if things come down to the common denominator of it being one, two, or three people, that they would be able to see that, hey, you know, maybe you need to do some self-awareness. It's
Yeah.
not even that they've had the wherewithal to do it themselves, but how do you think that some organizations can go about bringing that into the fold,
Yeah.
where they're actually doing some type of assessment and are truly in a place of action to do something about a toxic situation and to work on leadership and team development? What
Yeah. So that's a tough story. And I just like, so I wrote this article on gaslighting. Um, it, so gaslighting is kind of a buzzword, and I'm a geek. So there's,
explain what it is, explain what it is, because like you hear these buzzwords all the time: emotional intelligence, gaslighting, stuff like that. Explain what it is.
people have started to use gaslighting just like left and right. But, and it's, so when I say gaslighting, I mean it like in this really, in its purest form, which is where someone tries to make you feel crazy. Okay. So, like, I had read stories where, like, a colleague would take a folder off someone's desk and then outright deny it because they want to make them feel crazy. Or, like, a leader would say, like, tell someone they missed a meeting with them. And, but there was no meeting. And, so gaslighting is someone really makes you question your own mental health. And and what it's really like, people who do it to have, um, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, not even just bad intentions, but like evil intentions. Like they mean to do this. You know what I mean? They're not just like unself-aware, not good leaders. I mean, this is like devious behavior. So, and when you have something like that, like there's literally, that person has something going on that you cannot fix with leadership development. You know what I mean? And you, like, if there's a staff person who's under something like that, they just need to get out of there. Like this cannot be repaired. Mm-hmm. Now, if you're in a nonprofit, so like say that somebody just came in and to a leadership position and they just hadn't developed like those they came in as a management. So this is more likely, right? So they're very good managers. And I've still encounter leaders like this, but they're very transactional. So, which is especially problematic in the nonprofit sector because workers are intrinsically motivated. Like we need paychecks and we want to make money, and that's fine. But that's not the larger reason that we're there. We're there because we are committed to this greater good, right? So when you have a very transactional leader, and this is why sometimes it can be different when someone tries to come from the corporate sector into the nonprofit sector without this background knowledge, and they don't do quite as well because there's these like nuances that are just critical. And I'll have an example of that I want to talk about, like if we get to it, but
okay.
So say you just have someone who's like a transactional manager. Okay. So that means that they expect you to do X, Y, and Z. And if you do, you'll get your paycheck or a bonus, or you take on X number of clients because that's what's expected of you, regardless of if it's a really tough caseload or you've got something else on your plate or whatever it is. They're just very like, da, 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 da. And that's something that you can address, right? Like if they're willing to, they want to be a better leader, then that's something you can provide training for. And the number one way to figure some of that stuff out is to do a 360-degree assessment. And that means, so you have a board, right? In nonprofits, a volunteer board, and they're really supposed to be supervising the executive director, not supervising like from an operational, like not asking what they're doing each day, but like on a big picture level. And so ideally, they would initiate like a 360 evaluation as part of evaluating the leader. Now, if I was consulting with a leader, they wanted to be better, then I would recommend a 360-degree. And that's where you ask everyone. You would ask their staff. You would ask maybe even other people who they like, partners that they work with on their same kind of level. And then the board, and everybody would evaluate. And then you would look for some themes, and then those themes would be things that you would work on. And that's why I mean, like, you would have to be really open to that, because I mean, even, gosh, even I, like, when I think about that, makes me nervous, even just because,
Mhm.
not because I feel like I have anything to hide or anything, but because I know there are things to work on, and it's a vulnerable feeling, right? So you'd have to have somebody who is really open to that. Now, like, I would hope that in a really toxic nonprofit environment, like if you had a really abusive leader, I would hope that the board, like if the board was seeing a lot of turnover, they're getting some red flags, that they would recognize that and take some kind of action. But also, the director just has so much influence over the board, and they've influenced who's on the board, that it could be a toxic board. So
Mhm.
it just is really, like, it just comes down to whether or not, like, to turn that ship around, especially in a nonprofit, because we're not looking at, like, we don't have a profit bottom line that we're looking at. Then um, it would really just it comes down to the leader's willingness to improve. Yeah.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
You said some really great things to that because I mean, toxic environments are real,
Yeah.
especially in, organizations, um, corporate entities, small businesses, and
Yeah.
just all around. And yes, this type of work is so much is needed so much.
Mm-hmm.
I can tell you for myself that I've worked with various nonprofits and organizations that were either restructuring or just getting started, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so they were uh having to evaluate some things, and they're
Mm-hmm.
just trying to get people into the slots, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're not really thinking about the team aspect and the professional development side of things
Mm-hmm.
with, developing leaderships and things like that. So, what are some things that if you were to have some clients that are restructuring and as well as some clients that you got them at the very first beginning before they hired anyone.
Mm-hmm.
What are some things that you would tell them that they need to be on the lookout for when it came to developing a really great team?
Oh, yeah, that's a good question. Um, Hire so slow, you know, like, I think especially as if you're brand new, like just getting started, you could be like just excited about whoever wants to work with you, or you don't have hiring skills. But like on our team now, so I have now, who said this? Like, I never have anyone to credit. Was it some management guru? It'll come to me. The 3 by 3 by 3 rule. And we use this. And this is that every candidate we hire, we interview them 3 times in
Hmm.
3 different locations. Ideally, that doesn't always work out. And at least 3 other people talk to them or involved in the interview. So
Huh.
that way, yeah, because somebody might, like,
You
we've
got to
had it where,
explain this concept. You got to
yeah,
explain this concept.
sure. So, like, we just hired 3 people because we got a new state contract, and that was really exciting. So you can meet with someone once on Zoom, right?
Okay.
And typically I will meet just me personally. And I am involved in hiring at every level, because I feel like that's really such an important part of organizational culture and building your team.
Mhm.
And so first, typically I will do a very short 30-minute first interview on Zoom with candidates. And
Mhm.
first, I'm just looking at logistics, like, are you really qualified for this job? Do you have the availability that we need for this job? Things like that. Then, so that's like, they've just spoken with me. That's the first round. And then if they make it to the second round, we will typically do a longer interview, like an hour interview, and the program director will be there, and we will both talk to them and we'll dig in deeper. Um, and then there's either a third interview. We'll invite, and we typically have at least 2 other people there from the team, so that they're talking to people from different positions. And then we also, since we're a home visitation program, before the person will formally accept that we'll make them an informal offer and we'll say, but before you accept, we need you to go on a home visit with one of our parent educators and see what's happening here and make sure you really want this job.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll tell you that, like, having interviewed so many people, oh my gosh, so many people over the years, because we're growing, not because we have really low turnover, because we hire so slow. But like, someone might be really kind of shy on their first interview, but then when you get in person and there's more people, they might be more extroverted, or they might have like an amazing first interview. And then when you meet them that second or third time, then you see other aspects of their personality. And so that's why the 3x3x3, like, get different people's perspective, see how they interact with different people, see how they do in person versus on Zoom, like just try to get a fuller picture. And then something I tell my students at DMAC, and this is so true, is to hire for soft skills. So there are certain requirements that, like, you have to be in a job at our organization. There are like minimum requirements that you have to meet, and that's by our model. So like degree things and experience and da-da-da. But like all the other stuff, so our organization, for instance, if you have that minimum experience and you really want to work with children and families and you're passionate about that, we can teach you all the technical skills that you need to know. You know, like if it seems like you can learn and you're fabulous and you want to do this, then we can teach you the technical skills. Now, you'll sometimes talk to someone who has like 10, 20 years of experience doing the work, but they don't have those, like, seems like maybe they're not a team player, you know, or seems like they're not great communicators, either in written communication or verbal communication. But those soft skills, you know, like communication, teamwork, self-leadership, being able to self-motivate, just things like that. Like those are, so I tell my students, this is also from unsighted research, but like 80% of career success is soft skills. Only 20% is technical skills, you know, like the stuff that's directly relates to your job and doing your job. So those are my big tips when you're building your team, is focus on soft skills and how much someone wants the job. Like that goes so far for me. If someone really wants the job, because I know that they're going to like do what it takes and learn what they need to learn to excel in their role. So hire really slow and look for soft skills. That's my big advice. And really it serves us so well. We just have such minimal turnover and people really love their jobs at our organization. And so I think that this is good advice.
You know what? That's great advice. I don't think I've heard of the 3x3 rule, but I would love to implement that. You
Yeah.
know, we're growing as well. But I'm a little slow about, adding to our core team at the moment.
That's good. That's good. I mean, I think go slow, you know?
Yeah.
I also always tell people, this is a really geeky thing too. How long do we have, by the way? An hour?
We have an hour and we're about 43 minutes in. So we're good. We're good on time.
Do you want to hear something else geeky then about that?
Absolutely. I am a huge nerd. So let's go.
Okay. So this, I think, so many leaders need to hear this because it was life-changing for me. And it's about the 5 stages of group development. So a group is any 2 or more people, you know, so it could be like a romantic couple, your family, a baseball team. So in this context, in the nonprofit context, it's your work team, your board is a group, right? So all groups go through these same 5 stages of development, and they are forming, so we come together. Storming, that is where there is some kind of conflict. And that is where people figure out like what the rewards and consequences are in this group dynamic. There's so forming, storming, then there's norming, and then performing. And then some people say adjourning, but that's like how you're offboarding and things like that. So the reason I think this is such vital information is because I think a lot of people see conflict as a bad thing, or they think it might mean that they've made a bad hire, or they've have a bad addition to the board, or whatever it is. But conflict is vital, and it doesn't have to be like a massive blowout or anything. You know what I mean? But like
Yeah.
some kind of tension that has to happen and be resolved so that then the group can progress to norming, meaning like settling in, and then performing, being like, all right, we're going. You know what I mean? Like we're doing things, we're making things happen.
Yeah.
And so it's not, so we don't want to try to avoid conflict because that's such an critical part of develop, like the group bonding and coming together. But the important thing is for the leader to facilitate the conflict in a healthy way so that the group can move through it as painlessly as possible, right? So
Yeah.
to make sure in the conflict that they're being fair, the leader being fair, being communicative, being, you know what I mean? Like they are helping the group work for it. So I always say though, so anytime one person leaves the group or even one person joins the group, you have to start over with these steps. So
Uh,
for instance, I
okay.
know. So for
Okay.
instance, we just hired these 3 new people and we have the option to have them like start at different dates. And I was like, oh my gosh, no, like let's have them start all together so we can go through the 5 stages all at once. So we
Yeah.
don't like add a person and then have to start, and then add another person, like have to storm again. Like, so that's one thing I will say about, I guess my big messages there are that conflict is important. It's not like avoiding conflict, but facilitating conflict, and not to be scared when you see conflict, but like to lean into that. And also like if you can help it to bring people on at the same time.
You know what? I love that so
Yeah.
much. And one of the reasons why I especially love the conflict is important is because with my group, I don't want to hear yeses all the time.
Right.
You know, because I may be wrong and we don't need to be going down the wrong path. All of us just marching
Yeah.
to this. So,
Or they might have an idea you hadn't thought about that's going to be a
yes,
game changer. Yeah.
yes, yes. Because
Mm-hmm.
I mean, my people are brilliant,
Yeah.
and people around me are brilliant. My partners are brilliant. You're brilliant. Like I love that. So I need that.
Yeah.
Like I need that. It goes back to that saying, "Iron sharpens iron." You know what I mean? It makes us all stronger, and it keeps
Yes.
us on top of things, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, if I'm slacking on something, maybe I need to go read a book. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe I didn't read this particular article or whatever. And my people have read the article and they're like, hey, look, nice. Yeah, this is something else that's out. We may want to lean into that instead
Yes.
of, going down this same road or something like that. So it may not be something I want to hear.
Mm-hmm.
Something, maybe I'm weak on something. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, you know what? I need y'all to tell me the truth.
Yeah.
What's, about this, that, and the third, and, I mean, look, I care about my team, so I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to make adjustments as I need to because I want them to stay with me as long as, it serves all of us, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Because, I want to help them in their overall overarching goals as well
Mm-hmm.
as them serving, me as well. So, and so it's everybody got to get something out of it, but I
Yes.
don't need to just have like yes people all the time. It's good
Yes.
to be able to hear something that may not, may hurt your feelings a little bit because we thinking we know everything, right? We're
Right.
thinking, oh my gosh, here's this amazing, brilliant idea, and then you bring it to them, and they're like, well, there's probably something out there that's maybe just a little bit better than
Yes.
that, and but hey, and I'm like, you know what? Yeah, let's go with that. Let's
Yeah.
go with that.
Yes.
So yeah,
You're
I'm
so right. And I say all the time that like the best ideas, um, in recent years, especially now that I'm like kind of my most self-aware, have not been mine. So I'll give you an example. Like, um, so I'm the director. There's direct line staff, like people who are going into people's homes. Like they are the ones who are talking to clients. And
Mhm.
so I can see the big picture, but like, so an example is a few years ago, one of our home visitors was like, we should start a diaper bank.
Mm.
And she's like, people, especially just like starting to talk about diaper need. And gosh, diaper need, I could go on all day about, but I just learned that like families experiencing diaper need miss on average 5 out of 30 days of work because you can't take your baby to daycare without diapers.
Oh, I didn't
So
know.
yeah, so if you
Oh,
can't
that's a
send,
thing.
if
Wow.
you can't afford diapers then you can't send your baby to daycare and you miss 5 out of 30 days of work on average. And you're going to get fired if you miss that much work, right? So anyway, so this wasn't something I had really that was on my radar because why would it be, but she's in homes realizing that people like our low income clients can't afford diapers or that they're so expensive that they are taking away from other needs. Um and now we do that. Like she got it off the ground with my support. And that's like one of our biggest programs now. And it was not my idea. And it never would have occurred to me, So it's not like if someone else has an idea that like I'm not involved in it, but then I can put on that visionary hat and apply it to their idea and use my special skills and talents to bring it to life. But like just being aware that on a team, so this comes back to the same thing that like together, this is the definition of synergy, but like so if you have a group of 3, right, then it's like having a group of 5 because together they are all bigger than they would be as 3 individual people. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that's the whole point of why we have teams because because we're making synergy because we are like better together than we are as individuals, right? So yeah.
No, I get it. I completely get it because a lot of times for me, in my group and just even with my clients, sometimes out of our brainstorming sessions, because we have
Yeah.
brainstorming sessions, well, we call them strategy sessions a lot of
Mm-hmm.
times because that's what it boils down to. But you have a lot of sessions, right,
Mm-hmm.
where you guys are just bouncing things off of each other.
Yes.
It helps a lot with our program development. It helps a lot with just various aspects of our consulting business that we have.
Mm-hmm.
And it helps even in leadership as well when I'm talking to my team and we're trying to work out the kinks, we're working out things maybe that we need to do better
Mm-hmm.
going into the following year or to the next quarter or maybe
Mm-hmm.
for the next week.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
A lot of times you don't encounter certain things until it happens, right?
Yeah.
And then at that point you're like, oh, okay, we're not going to do that again.
Right.
And then you're getting together, and of course we already talked about the visionaries and the managers, right? But let's
Mm-hmm.
just say you have a person that's wearing both hats. Like now we got to get some folks in there, we got to have some conversations and
Yeah.
try to figure out how can we never do that again, you
Yeah.
know so, yeah, okay. So look, just going back over what we've talked about so far. So we've been talking about, self-awareness. We've been
Mm-hmm.
talking about, accountability
Mm-hmm.
and making sure that that leaders focus on soft skills, that we hire slow, that we admire and actually, use the input from our team, and
Mm-hmm.
that conflict can be good.
Is
That
good.
conflict
Yeah.
can be good. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And and I love this. And it seems like it boils down to is to some good communication,
Oh yeah.
as well. So let me ask you this. This is probably my last question.
Okay.
Out of your clients, do you do a lot of professional development when it comes to leadership development, doing like, workshops and things like that? And the reason why I'm asking this is because, having gone through a leadership program,
Mm-hmm.
myself,
Mm-hmm.
and being able to talk about, emotional intelligence or, the different ways that people communicate, or being able to go through conflict resolution
Yes.
and going through things like having difficult conversations, right? A
Mm-hmm.
whole curriculum on difficult conversations, who knew,
Yes.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So do you perform those things and do you suggest those things, or is that something that you would suggest for all organizations and and nonprofits? What
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So that's something I do, and it's my favorite thing to do. It's just like I'm a professional development and personal development like maniac, I guess. I don't know what to say about that, but I think they're one and the same, like we got to keep growing personally to really step into our power professionally and vice versa, right? So like I don't really see it as my work life and my home life, but this is one big Sheena, like living all these different parts of life. And so those like that's what I teach at DMAC or at the local community college. It's Des Moines Area Community College, DMAC. And with my staff and with my clients, like yesterday we have a monthly team meeting. One thing I love about my job, and everybody loves about our job, is that it's you work when and where you want, except once a month we all come together for 3 hours. And so at our monthly, and then we come together one on, like in various combinations throughout the month. And then there's a monthly check-in with everybody. But we come together in person 3 hours a week. 3 hours once a month. And yesterday I did a whole thing. Like I'll say like a workshop on goal setting and how we think about goal setting, and not just professionally, but we set personal goals because it's all influences, each aspect of your life influences the other aspects. So like, yes, these are what leadership is. A lot of that is soft skills. You know what I mean? Right? Like, so it's communication, it's conflict resolution, it's those things. And that is my favorite thing to coach people on, to train people about. So absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Sheena.
Yeah. So
We're in
fun.
our last, 3 minutes, last
Mm-hmm.
4 minutes of our conversation. I think this has been very rewarding because, like I said, I think that, so many different organizations, especially nonprofits, whether they're at the very initial stages of getting their nonprofits started,
Mm-hmm.
or restructuring, or they're just going about their business as doing business as usual. I do think that leadership development and team development is vital, and you have most definitely proven that today. That these are some important conversations that that organizations need to have.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I will say this because I want to put in a plug for you, for especially for some of our audience, and if they are looking to get your services, especially when it comes to development with leadership development and organizational development, because that is a definite need for some of our clientele as well. So
Mm-hmm.
if you want to just talk about what you want to do in these last couple of minutes
Mm-hmm.
and where folks can find you,
Yes.
and we'll just end it there.
Yeah, that sounds great. So my company and my website, so neweranonprofits.com. So NEWERA nonprofits.com. And the entry point to everything I do is the 1 hour one-on-one consultation. So you'll see something that says work with us. It's called a strategy session, right? So that's where we will get together for an hour and just so I can learn about what's going on and then come up with a plan. Linda Williams says I'm binge listening at work. Yay, Linda. Awesome. Thank you. So, yes. So neweranonprofits.com, if you want to work with me, or if like there's something that you just have an idea, like you want to do a goal setting workshop for your team or whatever it is for your board, or you want to talk about something like that, just throw the idea out there, message me. And I'm always just down to talk about possibilities.
I love it. I love it. Okay. Well, you know what? This is another talk of ours. We'll be having quite a few this year. Thank you so much, Sheena, for coming
Yay.
on and speaking with us. And it's good to talk to you again. Like
You
it's
too. Really
not
good.
allow a whole year or two
No.
go by without us, getting hopping on this thing and giving the people some information that they need to help better their organizations and businesses and, corporations and things like that. So if you want to get in contact with Sheena, she's already given you her information. And of course, I'm not ACO with Innovative Strategies. We're another consulting firm that works with capacity building for nonprofits and organizations as well. So you're probably already following us on Innovative Strategies LLC, but we are actually on pretty much any website or social media platform that you can find. We're on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube. So find us there, and we look forward to meeting with you guys again. We'll have another installment for our little, I guess you could say, maybe even fireside chats that we're having during the day. So, yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed your time and look forward to seeing you again later.
Thank you
Bye.
so much. Bye.